Atlas finally decided to re-release Persona 4 Golden on PC. I started doing my third run-through, having done the original Persona 4 and then Golden on Vita, and got up to rescuing Rise. I hadn't heard her voice in a while. It had been a long time since the voice actor, Kugamiya Rie, had done any notable typecast role as the tiny tsundere. Incidentally, the last anime I remember watching specifically for Kugamiya Rie would have been Dragon Crisis, which frankly was pretty terrible. The Palm Top Tiger had, relatively, long ago left our screens, having reinvented herself to inhabit roles such as Chica's mom in Love Live Sunshine and 001 in Darling in the Franxx. That's not to say she didn't have any standout roles past those Zero no Tsukayama, Full Metal Alchemist, or Shakugan no Shana days. Rise Kujikawa is an obvious example, but the last time I really heard the Queen of Tsundere in full force had been a long time ago. It harkened back to a simpler time, before isekais and idle hell and mobile games had taken over the anime zeitgeist. That led me to revisit an old friend. One of the classics that remains one of the better pure romance comedy anime. Today, I'd like to have a look through rose-tinted glasses at Toradora. The title, Toradora, refers to Tiger, Tora, and Dragon, Dora, the names of our eponymous protagonists, Ryuji Takasu and Taiga Aisaka. You're pretty much guaranteed from the name to know what you're getting from this series. They're going to be lovebirds, but it's the journey, not the destination, that is emphasized. The spotlight is firmly upon these two teenagers, their struggle to recognize their feelings for each other, and their friends. There aren't any Deus Ex Machinas going on here like Claned. There aren't any demons that need killing like Shakugan no Shana. There isn't even any real contrived hook to the relationship like other more recent romance anime. Taiga doesn't have 4 other sisters, Ryuji isn't making babies with his teacher while pining for Taiga, and Ryuji and Taiga aren't using each other's bodies for sexual pleasure while lusting after each other's teachers. And then Taiga's friend decides to chomp her bones. Seriously, what the hell, Kuzuno-honkai. Ryuji and Taiga are just some friends hanging out in school, dealing with nicknames and being generally misunderstood, crushing on those few classmates that show them any sign of kindness, like most teenagers, to be honest. I feel like for any piece of media that heavily focuses on romance between the two characters, it's best to review how that relationship grows throughout the series. Toradora starts off sprinting. Episode 1 concisely introduces most of our main cast and maps out their relationships. Taiga likes Kitamura, who is friends with Ryuji, who likes Minori, who's friends with Taiga. What's not a simple relationship trapezium of crushes and friendships between classmates? It also shows off our two protagonists' main personality traits. Ryuji as a scary-looking, awkward guy with motherly instincts and a heart of gold, and Taiga as a hard-headed maiden, seeking validation from her parents and covering her own insecurities. Both resent being misunderstood from their outward impressions and enter a vow of camaraderie to achieve eternal romantic bliss. Little did they know. In fact, at the start, I feel a little condescending explaining how their relationship is portrayed at Toradora's opening few episodes. It's so clear in the characters' dialogue and internal thoughts, with each scene laid out to present anime tropes and a stubborn refusal to waste time with useless exposition. Several scenes play out as you would expect. Wacky, far-fetched plans to woo your chosen victim into realizing their own deeply suppressed lust that you so clearly see they have for your own far more wretched existence, is so classically teenager, it hurts. It's only until episode 5 that my favourite character, Ami Kawashima, shows up. Her own self-understanding of her dual-faced nature acts as a nice foil to the rest of the cast, who are too tangled up and self-absorbed in their own feelings to realize the truth. This gets increasingly clear as the series ramps up to the climax in episode 21. Although she does have some skin in the game as well, saying as much in episode 18 to Ryuji in the sports storeroom, where obviously all super important conversations happen, she remains incredibly perceptive to her fellow classmates and realizes the futility in her own pursuit, as she tries to nudge everyone to fulfill their true desires. Ami even realizes that she herself doesn't know everything, again surprisingly prescient for her youth. The standout point for Toradora, though, through all its ups and downs, is its raw wackiness and exaggerations in stupid high school relationships. As a teenager, this definitely captured my attention as an overly dramatic 14-15-year-old. Kitamura's nervous breakdown and the surrounding events over episodes 14 to 16 are a teenager's fantasy through and through over how far they'd go for friendship and the one and only. In reality, though, the likelihood of someone being willing to get suspended from school to beat up their crush's crush for being too cowardly to confess is cruising pretty low to zero, at least in my own experience. And, as with most relationships, it usually seems to come down to communication, with student council president Sumire just having to figure out what will make her happy, damned be the consequences, and just lay it out in front of Kitamura for them to come to a decision about what they want together. Tiger was right in some respects. Sumire was pretty selfish and cowardly. If you both want it to work, there will be some way somehow. This sentiment might be from the older, wiser, generally less fun me than the me from 10, 11, 12 years ago. And I'm sure in another few years I'll probably have another dimension to add on to how high school kids should be more mature. Because high school kids have to be more mature. Speaking of idiotic miscommunication, episode 19 is really, finally, when everything starts to coalesce and add up for the characters, when someone, inadvertently both, knows their own feelings and blabs them to the one person that they're directed to. The event itself isn't even remotely realistic. A high school child being led out into a snowstorm while on a school trip is so far-fetched, let alone their fellow classmates being allowed to rescue one of their own. Soon after that, the emotional yarn gets all untangled in a messy classroom wrestling showdown in episode 23. Much like the opening, Toradora wastes no time from there in resolving all the loose threads once they've been untangled. It still manages to feel unrushed, as all these relationship threads have been foreshadowed and teased for the entire series as they become relevant. Not gonna lie though, that evening at the Takase family residence, Tiger and Ryuji definitely, got down to business. You might be thinking, surely this miscommunication makes the series worse. Most romance anime is just lots of miscommunication and people not talking to each other properly, and that's why most of it is pretty much crap. Why is Toradora different? Why should it get any special treatment? And on one level, you're right. It shouldn't. It has the same kind of tropes and stupidity that any other high school set anime has. It's got the over-the-top fighting, the internal soliloquies where you wonder why they aren't just saying it and it would clear up all the misunderstandings, the cultural festival, although in this case it's also got a Christmas festival, which just makes that particular trope culturally more sultry and spicy. It's got, the over-the-top facial reactions and all the trappings of a more mediocre romance anime. Not going to lie, I eat that kind of shit up. I mean, Kaguya-sama wa Kokurasetai, something most people should know right now, is pretty much all of that in its most pure form, at least in the first season, where, love is war, right? It's just that I'm not saying that Kaguya-sama is bad, by the way. I'm just acknowledging that even with those series that execute well, it doesn't necessarily stand out in that department. What sets Toradora apart is that the characters are actually allowed to have development. While, yes, they may make the same mistakes that they've seen already, great example being the Kitamura breakdown that I mentioned earlier, Tiger does mellow out and realize that she is actually kind of an asshole. When she abruptly leaves school at the end, while that definitely could have been done a hell of a lot better from both an execution and character standpoint, it does demonstrate that some sort of self-reflection and growth has happened within Tiger. When I first watched it, I was confused about what actually happened. She sent a star to everyone with some cryptic, over-the-top teenagery message and then left? After rewatching it, I realized then that when she was going through her mum's voicemails, she probably went back home to try to patch things up with her parents. That's a pretty cool thing to do, especially straight after she and Ryuji finally acknowledged their feelings for each other. That being said, her execution definitely didn't need to leave Ryuji or her schoolmates in the lurch. I guess now that I've touched on kind of the execution of the plot and more of the production aspect, I should probably approach the animation and soundtrack, the more physical, more tangible parts of the series. To be fair, my standards for animation quality aren't exactly high. I grew up in the 2000s and 1990s after all. Toradora looks acceptable. I had to find 1080p HD versions of it since the last copy I had of it was DVD quality, and I wanted to see if it had improved at all in the intervening 10 years at a higher resolution. It certainly looks quite a bit cleaner, but the baseline execution is standard. Nothing starkly offensive or outstanding about it. The soundtrack as well is very 2000s anime. Nothing grandiose with any orchestral arrangements, although there are certainly strings. And the cast opening and endings with Hori Yui and Kugami Rie are typical J-pop, although Orange and Silky Love still have a soft spot in my heart. The BGMs are, however, perfectly fine and serviceable for their needs and enhance the scenes being played on screen. They're never really distracting, although you may get tired of some themes. The most recognizable of these themes is probably Lost My Pieces, being played here. This is the drama theme that plays during all the important scenes in Toradora. I wish I could say there was something intrinsically memorable about the music, but there really isn't. It enhances the scenes and does its job as a motif for all drama, and it definitely primes you for whatever heartbreak is to occur on screen. Hashimoto Yukari's songs in this soundtrack are solid, and given her work since Toradora, it's obvious that she is a solid, stable composer who consistently delivers good music, just, unfortunately, not anything outstanding. Overall, wow factor in terms of the spectacle is pretty average. It wasn't too much of a looker at the time, even, but again, this series isn't focused on providing a spectacle like Hoseki no Kuni, Shingeki no Kyojin, or hell, even Angel Beats, back when everyone was beating off PA Works' animation quality. If you haven't watched this series, then you should be going into this for the character content. Toradora aired during October 2008 through to March 2009. For context of what I had seen at the time, I'd only recently gobbled up the entirety of Clannad, the visual novel, ending up playing around 300 plus hours of it, and I'd started really sinking my teeth into anime and manga. I was reading the big three each week and had started the real first phase of weebness, insatiable, voracious hunger. In addition to Clannad, I'd consumed the 2006 run of Haruhi, the original Eureka 7, and had grabbed anime off my high school friends, watched Suzuka through, Bartender through, and stopped short of watching Bleach only because I was already reading the manga and that was just more efficient. I had definitely fallen into the romance comedy genre fairly hard, and although at this time I was still open to the wider gamut of typical genres, Toradora was definitely one that stood out for me. It was just more relatable. The characters' inner turmoil over their facades, only to realize that their inner self was more important. Well, I guess we could just tie it back to Persona at that point. In more general Western pop culture at the time, that inner turmoil was definitely being resonated with popular bands at the time. My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, Linkin Park. These are all the faces of the emo teenager phase in high school, when rebellion and deep despair were all the rage. But your parents had still not completely stamped out the fire in you to rock out and rage against the machine. Toradora, although certainly more muted, carries a similar message, echoed in its opening and closing dialogue. This muted expression of rebellion definitely resonated with me more than those contemporary Western artists. I was not a big fan of MCO or Linkin Park at the time. Anime, video games, and manga definitely were not conducive to good grades, leaning it more to the rebellious side, but I was not full of rage, more of cautious hope that things would get better at some distant future past high school if I kept working at it. 2020, by the way, has so far definitely not lived up to those expectations. Comparing that to today, Well, I'm not exactly hip with the new hotness, but artists such as Post Malone and Drake definitely evoke more malaise than rage. Numbness over recognition, resignation rather than that unquenchable desire to carry on. I guess overall you can guess that, my opinion of Toradora is fairly high. One reason I decided to do this particular series is that, for me at least, it remains as one of the more balanced rom-com animes. It walks that fine line of tragedy and comedy to accentuate the highs and deepen the lows. Characters are allowed growth, and drama did not feel manufactured out of pure misunderstandings and easily solvable situations. There is definitely less softcore porn service in Toradora than exists in more recent takes on the genre. Toradora is a great foil for the current crop of anime and manga in the romance comedy genre, which is something I'll save for another video, I think. If you've watched or listened all the way to the end, thanks a lot for hearing me out. I hope it was at least enjoyable, and I really hope that you maybe learned something or it provoked some thoughts in your mind. I do plan to make one or two more of these, and maybe one on like the general evolution of romance comedy in general and manga and anime, because that particular topic is pretty interesting to me at the moment. Again, I really hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for coming all the way in. I don't really want to sound like everyone else, but please like and subscribe, and if you want to leave a comment as well, I'll try and have a look. If you have any other suggestions for other things you'd like me to have a look at, please do, and I'll see if I can get around to it. My particular specialty is probably around 2000s, 2010s anime, back when I was really voraciously going at it. But if you want me to have take a look at something newer, because I definitely dropped off anime in the last few years, and have a fresh take on it, by all means. I'll probably try and get another sort of similar length video out, probably by the end of the month or maybe the first week of August. And yeah, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it.